Hello! This video is the first in a series for my organizational communication class. That's COM 330. And this is going to be a series of lectures, probably 3 of them, and all 3 of them together will basically count as one class about organizational communication, particularly peer and coworker relationships. Alright? So, peer and coworker relationships obviously exist in the workplace. They exist in any organizations, right? Because ultimately an organization is just people interacting, right? So you're bound to have sort of ordinary interactions with these people. Now, before we get any further, it's worth noting that interpersonal communication and organizational communication are separate things that we study. Right? And I don't want to get too much into the interpersonal aspect of organizations, as that really would be better served by taking an interpersonal communication class. But we will talk about it generally, just as a way of introducing you to it. And it's also worth, just noting the particularities of how interpersonal relationships do play out in the workplace. It is worth studying inside OrgComm, because ultimately interpersonal relationships are a variable inside of organizations. And it's worth saying, it's sort of co-constructive, organizational life is a variable inside the way that people's relationships do play out. Okay, so why is it worth studying? One of the reasons it's worth studying is because it's kind of inevitable that people are going to have interpersonal relationships inside of organizations. Why is it inevitable? One, proximity, okay? People being close to one another are going to have deeper relationships with each other. They're not always better. They could be very sort of deep and angry. You could hate the people that you're close to. But one way or another, if you're close to them, it will breed some kind of important relationship, even if it's not a good one. Just think about your roommates, right? Like, you never, live with someone and, remain truly apathetic to them. You either, start to like them a whole lot, or you start to hate them a whole lot. But whatever it is, it's a whole lot. So, proximity. It adds closeness, or it breeds resentment, one of the two. Another reason that interpersonal relationships are inevitable in organizations is because that all human interaction has a relational component. So even if I walk up to you and I say, John, do you have those reports ready for me? Even though my message is filled with content, the reason I walked up to you was so that I could transmit that content. And even though I'm seeking content in return, there's still a relational level, and there's no such thing as only content communication without a relational element. Because the way that I ask you for the reports says something about who I think I am in comparison to you and what I want our relationship to be. So I could say, hey, could you help me mop the floor? Or I could say, hey, mop the floor. Or I could say, please mop the floor. Or I could say, mop the floor and I'll give you a bonus. Or I could say, why haven't you mopped the fucking floor yet? In each of these different ways of basically eliciting your behavior, which is to mop the floor, not only is there content, namely my desire for you to wash the floor, to mop the floor, it also says tons of things about the relationship that we have, right? Another reason that interpersonal relationships happen in the workplace, in organizations, is because humans have an interpersonal need. We have interpersonal needs. And anytime we're in situations to fill those needs, we tend to fill them. So if you're a person who really likes to know it all, you're probably a know-it-all at work also. If you're a person who just loves to talk, you probably love to talk at work also. If you're a person who needs to create drama wherever you go, you probably create drama also in the organizations that you're a member of. Whatever your emotional needs, be them, admirable or despicable, they're probably going to play out in the organizational life as well. All right, so it's inevitable. That's the first point I want to get across. Now, there are different kinds of peer-to-peer relationships. And I'm going to tell you the ones that basically the 3 that the book tells you, and then I'm going to organize them in a way that, using something that we've already discussed, and posit a few more. Okay, so on the first, we have what are called information peers. And basically, information peers are people who basically give you information. They give you task support inside of the organization. So this is a person for whom the relationship is very defined by the organization, basically isn't going to rise above sort of like work acquaintance, right? So that's information peer. Then there's what's called a collegial peer. And a collegial peer is somebody who you work with or you're in an organization with, and you're somewhat close to. You might share some personal details. You might care what they think about you. They're somewhat a friend, but they're also basically still within in the framework of the workplace. So you might go out with them and a group of other friends from work, but you probably, like, they wouldn't come to your mom's funeral, right? So they're not like a true friend. They're sort of 50-50, right? Half coworker, half friend. The third kind of relationship is called a special peer. And this is basically someone for whom the rules of the organizations or the original sort of coworker-ish relationship that you have had has been trumped by a friendship relationship. You share important details, what they think is terribly important of you, and they're probably willing to do things for you that an ordinary coworker would not be. And special peers, right, they're basically friends, even though they may have started out as coworkers. Now, reading these things over, I was reminded of Blank and Monton's like managerial grid, and I'm going to lay this out for you. If you remember, sort of our y-axis was concerned for people, and our x-axis was concerned for production. So the higher you get over here, the more and more you are concerned with the function of the organization, and the higher and higher you are here, the more you are concerned with the well-being of the people involved. All right, now, so an information peer, I'll give you a second. Where do you think that they would? Where do you think? Are they high on the person spectrum? Are they high on the production spectrum? And where in this whole box does it put them? Good. Now that you've answered, I hope you agree that they go over here. An information peer is basically a relationship defined by production and not defined by the well-being of the other person. Right? Now, a collegial peer, where do you think they go? I'm saying the middle. This is a person where there's a balanced approach to somewhat their well-being, but also the well-being of the company. And a special peer, boop, goes over here. This is a person for whom the well-being of the company has been trumped, and now their well-being takes precedent over the others. So, one, this is a way of organizing it, but also, I think, shows that there are possibility for two more that are worth mentioning. One would over be here, which would be no relationship, apathetic, right? And over here would be someone for whom you have high concern for who they are, but also high concern for the production of the company. Now, I was talking to my fiancée, Kristen, and she was talking about her workplace, and one of the things that their managers talked about, and they had this idea called the centers of excellence. And basically, the managers were supposed to identify centers of excellence that each of the employees had, and that's basically something that person naturally strived at. And the idea was not to have job descriptions so set in stone so that you couldn't fluidly define them to match the person's particular job skills. Now, in this way, part of the reason that they did that was so that they could get people being the most productive that they could be. And so in that way, there was high concern for production. But there's also real value into saying, you know what, this is something that you're really good at, and I want to give you an opportunity to get better at it. Because that also maneuvers it as high concern for people. Because giving someone the opportunity to thrive as who they are actually helps them. And so there is a way to sort of get up here into the magical, double dip, win both ways. And that is to foster a relationship with someone that brings out their best and really treats them as the person that they are, but still understands what they are as a contributing part of that organization. So ends part 1 of the peer and coworker relationships and organizational communication. Stay tuned for parts 2 and 3.